Welcome everyone to the ESDP launch. Here we will introduce, it's the kickoff to introduce the program on the entrepreneurial program organized by the Enrich project. And it's an honor to have as our keynote speaker, Dr. Celia Merzbacher. I will be the moderator. I will introduce Celia in a few moments, but first of all, let me introduce well, if I can use the metaphor of the rocket, the program is really like going into space, discovering new opportunities together. And for a rocket, you always need a crew. You need a pilot, you need members, you need specialized people. And for this, it's a pleasure to introduce the other members of the team. So let's move to the next slide. Where is it? Yes, here it is. So please appear on screen. You are all there. Yes, fantastic. So we have Johanna Füllmann. Please, Johanna, you are the team leader.
Thank you so much, Paolo, for the wonderful introduction. Yeah, and I will start with the presentation of our team. Ilka, Claire, Mende, and I, we are all responsible for the Entrepreneur Skills Development Program Online Academy. So turning a physical program into an online academy, we took this as a great opportunity. And the four of us really worked hard the past couple of weeks and months to strongly together develop this program. I am Johanna Füllmann from DLR Project Management Agency in Germany. I am the team leader of EU projects within the Department of Cooperation with Third Countries and International Organizations. And I am the creator of Enrich in the USA, and in this position, I'm responsible for the Entrepreneurial Skills Development Program Online Academy with all of its strategic directions, vision and mission, as well as all budgetary items.
Yes, Claire.
And my name is Claire Chen. I'm the Senior Manager of a global initiative at NCURA, National Council of University Research Administrators, based in Washington, D.C. And of course, now we are virtually online everywhere. My role within the ESDP Online Academy is I serve as a liaison between our team, participants, and the mission specialists and experts.
Thank you very much, Claire. And Ilka Löffler.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ilka Löffler. Exactly. I'm also from DLR. We are originally based in Bonn, but I'm now talking out of Cologne. And within the ESDP Online Academy, I'm responsible for promotional activities as well as participant management.
Thank you very much. And Mende, well, you are from Bhutan.
Yes, thank you, Paolo. My name is Mende Tujiyangdan, and as Paolo mentioned, I'm originally from Bhutan. But now I'm working as a program assistant with Claire at the National Council of University Research Administrators. And for the ESDP Online Academy, I'll be a technical supervisor, and I'll be also managing participants.
Wonderful. So you can see that you really are in good hands. I am more the steward in this process, so I will show you where the safety exits are and all the other important information when you join the rocket. But my role as facilitator will be that of animating and facilitating interactive sessions, because you will be experiencing, well, classroom-like activities, but all very interactive, plus labs where we will be putting hands-on entrepreneurial discovery processes, canvases, and things like that. So it will be an honor to collaborate with this fantastic team. Thank you very much. Then I will now move to the first part. We are doing this through the platform through a webinars, but we want to know more about you all. So the first thing to use, you all received the code for menti.com, and you have if you connect to menti.com from your smartphone and dial menti.com and use the code 765742, we will be using this quite a lot throughout the session. So just to know, what country are you from? I gave two options because, you know, I was born in Brazil, but I live in Italy. So I would say I'm from Italy. But some of us in this global world, it's hard to answer to that question. Yeah, sometimes, yeah. So let's see, we are getting 5 answers. People from Germany, Hungary, China. I will also submit my answer. So you have one from Italy, maybe more than one. So we should have about 50, correct me if I'm wrong, 50, 52 assistant participants, 38, yeah, 38 at the moment. So there are still some answers that could be coming from the participants. We see that the majority are connecting from Germany, Hungary, USA, but we also have people from Italy, China, Luxembourg, Estonia, Moldova, France. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you all with us. And as we want to know more about your questions, about what you want to discover, we have introduced the possibility throughout the seminar for you to ask a question to the speakers. So while the answers are coming, we have also someone from South Africa. Welcome. From Ukraine and Romania. Great. Yes, Bhutan, of course. So we'll move to the next question, and then I introduce Celia Merzbacher. And the next question is basically a running question. You will have this on all the time. You can just, while the speakers are speaking, this is always on, even in the second part of the presentation where the Enrich program will describe more the structure of the entrepreneurial skill development program. So during you just basically you can have you can submit a question, add the surname of the speaker, and to do so you can also check what other questions have been submitted. At the moment there are no questions, of course, and you can also put a like a thumbs up, and the questions that receive more likes will be pushed up in the list of questions that we receive for the final Q&A part. So, well, these are the tools for the interaction. Let's move to the substance of today's seminar. So it's really a pleasure. I was reading the bio of Celia Merzbacher, and it's a person that's bridging research and commercialization and development, and in a fantastic way. So Celia is the Deputy Director of the Quantum Economic Development Consortium, a consortium that aims to enable and strengthen the US commercial quantum industry. The QEDC is supported by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, and industry members, and is managed by the SRI International. Previously, Celia Merzbacher was the Vice President for Innovative Partnerships of the Semiconductor Research Corporation and Assistant Director for Technology R&D in the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. So quite a high responsibility. She has a background in material science, and her research led to 6 patents and more than 50 technical publications. So what an honor to have you with us. And you are getting some hearts. People are putting the hearts up. Yeah, 1, 2 more hearts are coming up. So Celia, I will be accompanying you with moderating the questions because you have some questions through your presentation, but now the floor is yours.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are located. It's great to have such a diverse and international audience. And through Menti, we'll have a chance to interact, I hope, during the presentation. It's really quite an honor to be asked to be part of this kickoff for the Academy, and I hope that I can sort of give a flavor of what this program is about, and you'll be excited to participate going forward. So I'm Celia Merzbacher. I am a director at SRI International and deputy director of this new Quantum Economic Development Consortium that I'll tell you just a little bit about that and then get into the discussion about innovation. So if you go to the next slide, Paolo, thank you. SRI International is a research center, a research institute. It's based in Menlo Park, California. Originally, it was Stanford Research Institute. It was established back in the 1940s and went out independently in the 1970s. But it's an interesting part of the whole research ecosystem that people don't always think about in this country. Maybe in your country, these kinds of centers are well known. But it's a center that does primarily government contract work for research. And as you see on this slide in the bottom left, it's over the years done several $1 billion of research. Each year, the budget is around $500 million, and there are about 1,500 employees. Many of them, about 2/3, have advanced degrees. So it's sort of like a university research center without the students and classes. As you see under innovation, so the sort of motto of SRI is discover, invent, and apply. And you can see some of the statistics here that pertain to all of that. So the research investment is the discovery phase. The invent is represented by the patents, and you can see the number of patents over time is 4,000 out of the work that's been going on here at SRI. And then apply. SRI does not make anything, so we have to transition the results of that research out to someone who will make it into a commercial product. And we have, it says here 60 plus, and this is an old slide, it should say 70 plus spin-off companies to date that have been started based on the results of SRI research. So it's very practical research in that sense. And while it may originally be done for government purposes, many of those kinds of technologies have other applications and have been used to create medical devices and other benefits for society. And about 1/3 of the spin-outs have had an exit, a successful exit. So 1/3 of our ventures, in a way, have been successful, which is a very good record. The next slide is about, so SRI was asked to manage this new consortium called QEDC. And if you go to the next slide, this is just my one slide about QEDC. This is my sort of day job. I help to run the consortium, which just started in 2018 and is being done under the US government National Quantum Initiative. So it has government support, but it's really driven by the quantum industry. And we have more than 120 organizations, mainly corporations, but also universities and other stakeholders that are interested in this new field of quantum information science and technology, and in the potential it has for being disruptive in many sectors. So we've got the entire supply chain, from the people who make components and peripheral technology that's necessary, the people who are developing the big quantum systems like quantum computers and quantum communication systems, and then the end users like banks, like energy companies, like pharmaceutical companies. These are all organizations that are thinking, this may be important for my business, and they're getting involved now to understand it. So the whole innovation process is all being sort of addressed in this consortium, and that's part of why I think I was asked to speak to you today, because we at the consortium are looking at that process from the very early stages all the way through to making something that's practical. So you can go to our website to learn more if you're interested in that in particular. Okay, so moving to the next slide, we have a question so we can understand the audience a little bit. And the ecosystem of innovation and research involves a lot of different players. And so we've identified some of them here: academia, government, industry, nonprofits like SRI. SRI is a nonprofit research institute. So if you can go to Menti and let us know where you fit into this. And there are others, you know, perhaps you're at a law firm that's licensing patents or something. That would be other. But it looks like most people are either industry, government, some nonprofit people, not too many university people on the call yet, or they're not weighing in yet. This is really helpful, thank you. And it's interesting, it's important actually to recognize that all of these different sectors have a role in the innovation process. And often ideas come out of the universities. Students especially are involved in the lab and doing research, but they graduate and then they go to someplace else. They go to another, perhaps university position, but they may go to industry, they may go to government. And so they take the ideas and their know-how with them, and that's part of the tech transfer process, of course. And the idea, which again, a university doesn't make things, needs to have a home, a place to kind of take root and grow. So this gives us a sense, thank you, of
Celia, may I just come in, because I've seen that some people have joined probably later, just to remind people that if you want to answer to the questions that Celia will be posing, you just have to connect to www.menti.com and use the code above 765742. So we received 20 answers, and at the moment we have 45 participants. So just a reminder. Thank you, Celia. Sorry for that.
No worries. Thank you for the reminder, and that should appear, I think, at the top of the.
More answers are arriving. So we have several nonprofit.
People are logging on to Menti. Very good. So if we go to the next slide, we have another question. So when I first put together this this talk, I was sort of thinking that there would be a lot of people who have an idea that they want to get out and create a startup and launch into something that's going to be the next unicorn. So I'm interested now in asking, and people are starting to answer, do you have an idea that you want to, or maybe you're in an office, there were a lot of people who said they worked in nonprofits. These may be offices that are responsible for helping people with ideas. So maybe you're not the idea holder, but you're part of a team already that is taking some idea and moving it forward. You can answer this question however you like. But we kind of wanted a sense of how many people are maybe part of getting an idea into practical application. And the reason I'm asking this question is because I think very simply, sometimes I try to divide the world into two things, black and white. But there's the idea of push and pull. And so sometimes an idea is something that's discovered in the process of doing some fairly fundamental work. And then you realize, oh, this is something that could be useful for X. Sometimes you've got a problem and you don't have a solution. And so you're pulling from science and technology to find a solution for a problem. So that sort of is different. Maybe you have a problem, but not an idea for a solution yet. And that's also very important and useful. Okay, we go to the next. We've got mostly, it looks like 2 to 1 almost, people who have an idea for a new thing, a new product or service. So the next slide, before we start voting, and the voting will take place, I think, on the next chart. This sort of follows up on the idea of push and pull a little bit and makes it a little bit more granular and sort of 2-dimensional, at least, if not 3-dimensional. So often people think of R&D in a very linear way, from idea and some basic research and then applied research and then a prototype. And there's a very sort of stepwise sequence that goes to, at the end, a product or something that can be commercialized. But it's not really like that in reality. And this is from a book that I highly recommend by Donald Stokes called Pasteur's Quadrant. And maybe some of you are familiar with it. He tried to look at innovation as having at least two dimensions. And one is motivation for fundamental understanding. And so on the left-hand axis is this, yes, high at the top, someone whose research is really driven by understanding the fundamental nature of the problem. And this is called the Bohr, the Niels Bohr area. He was really looking at the basic physics of matter, and he wasn't trying to do it because there was a particular application at the end of it. Now, that kind of research can ultimately be very useful. And for instance, lasers are based on, in fact, quantum physics in a way. And so understanding the fundamental nature can lead to something practical. On the x-axis here is how motivated is the work by its use, its application. It's driven by a problem. And that's called the Edison corner or quadrant. And there's less interest in understanding why, but just what the thing can do. So make 1,000 light bulbs and figure out which one works best and go make it. So in the top right is this use-inspired corner, which is labeled Pasteur's corner. And there, you're looking at a problem, you're trying to solve something, but you're trying to understand the why as well. And so Louis Pasteur is known as the father of microbiology in a way, because he was really understanding the fundamental processes that were important in areas like fermentation and chemistry and so on. So there's a use that's envisioned, but there's also drive to understand the basic fundamental research part. And so the next question asks you, are you being driven more by fundamental understanding coming out of a university lab perhaps, or do you have a problem that needs a solution and you're really driven to find a practical solution to your application? And if you can vote for those two, primarily, of course, because it's always going to be a little bit of a mix in reality, but this also has to do with, do you have a hammer and you're looking for a nail, in a sense, or do you have the nail that needs to be hammered? You've got the problem, but you don't have the solution yet. So here it looks like we have some people who are working in fundamental research and may have an idea they think could be practical. And then 2/3, it looks like, are actually coming at it from a very practical direction, use-inspired, if you will. And that's great. And I think that it's an interesting question for people who are planning programs and thinking about where to make investments in government policy and so on. So I do recommend Donald Stokes' book if you haven't seen it, if you're in that business. So we have both areas, and that's good to know. So thank you for giving us a snapshot on that. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, so you've got a new gizmo, I call it, better Mousetrap. Now what? So as we've been discussing, it's really important if what you want to do is to create the next, iPhone or something that's going to be wildly successful, to understand what it's good for. And people often point to the iPod, or iPod was the original little thing that some of you are probably too young, but it was a music player. And it was novel at the time, and people didn't, if you had gone out to the marketplace and said, do you need this? People wouldn't have known that they wanted it because there didn't exist such a thing. And people also sometimes point out and say, if you had asked somebody before the automobile was invented, what do you want to get around better? They would say a faster horse because they didn't know about the automobile. So you have to frame it in a sort of general purpose way. How do you want to improve transportation, personal mobility, etc.? So what is the problem that you're addressing? Next, if you advance, I did a little bit of research to look at some problems out there, and there's apparently an enormous need for self-cleaning cat litter boxes. And you can find many examples of them that people have invented out available. And presumably they all think theirs is the best, and they are addressing the problem with some clever solution. So if you're coming up with a new product like this, you need to go out and talk to the customers. And that's what programs like the US I-Corps program are really aimed at. And I think you're going to hear about that at future sessions of the Academy. So in this case, who's the customer? Well, you do want the cats to be happy with the product. But really the people who are making the decision and spending the money, of course, are the cat's owners. And so you need to make sure that they're going to find the product satisfactory and worth paying for, and how much they might pay for it. So if you click again, the question is, how big perhaps is the market? And I just did a little bit of research, and I was able to find that in the US there are about 60 million cats, and they live in about 30 million houses. And so that gives you an idea in that market how many you might, that's the sort of addressable market potential. And I listened to podcasts a lot, and there was a podcast about a guy who started a business online selling sheets for beds. And he said, well, my market is everyone, because everybody needs sheets for their bed. So this is a really important question to think about as you're developing your new technology. Now, some technologies, maybe you're coming up with a better detector for a linear accelerator. This is a very narrow market, but they cost a lot individually, and so that can be a perfectly legitimate business as well. But you need to think about these questions. Okay, next slide, please. So we're going to ask you to give us a sense of what market you're playing in. What is your killer app for your technology? And I used to work in a government laboratory, work for the Navy, and we would make things like technology for analyzing satellite images. And it turned out that that same technology could be used for analyzing mammograms and finding cancer in breast cancer. So the killer app can be multiple. And so you've got a technology. The question is, where do you think it has the biggest application? And I've shown some areas here, and certainly there are many more. And so again, this is just a chance to find out from you what you think your area of application is. So and there's pictures here showing a diversity of what those might be, but you've got your own idea. So if we go to the next one, you can start voting. And I'll let you, you're gonna have to type here, this will take a little time. But the reason I asked this question is because different applications, and this is something that's important to keep in mind, different applications have different barriers to ultimate commercialization. And a big one can be regulatory. So if you're going to make a medicine, then you are going to have to get a food. In the US, it's the Food and Drug Administration. In other countries, you have your own version of an agency that approves medicine for sale. And it has to be shown to be safe and effective. And there is a lot of work that has to be done in order to go forward and sell something as a drug. However, if what you can do is, instead of making a drug, you can sell something as a supplement, or if you're working on a medical device, you can sell it as a fitness tracker, like a Fitbit, then there are fewer regulations and you can go much faster to market. And so it's good to think about your application, and not just the technical risks that there are along the way to realizing it, but also these non-technical risks, in a sense, these regulatory and other barriers that you're going to have to get across before you can make the product. And we see here there are a lot of people who have indicated medicine and healthcare is an area of interest. Telecommunication also, there are standards and interoperability requirements and so on. So in almost every area, there are some kind of standards and sometimes also regulations that you need to be aware of, certainly, as you go forward. Great, well, thank you. And energy is a big one too. That's exciting, actually. Okay, so if we go to the next slide. So you've got your idea, and you've got an idea of where you want to apply it. How do you get from where you are now to an actual product? There's a sort of useful way of thinking about that called the technology readiness scale. And this was developed originally by NASA for the development of large systems that were going into space. And space is a pretty harsh environment. and you can't go out and just fix it once. It's not like reboot your computer. If it's out there and it needs repair, that's going to be expensive. Maybe some of you recall the Hubble Space Telescope ended up having an optical problem. They had to go and repair it. And of course, that took a long time and a lot of money to do. So you don't want that kind of problem to crop up when you're developing systems for space or for any area, actually. So NASA came up with this scale, the technology readiness scale. And it goes from, you can see at the top, and you can, if you go online, you'll find a lot of versions of this scale with different sort of descriptions of the different levels. And they may be more useful for certain applications if you're in biosciences versus physical sciences. Because NASA did it, of course, it was more a physical science and system level scale originally. I like this one because it has a 0, meaning this is just an idea right now. There's really no technology almost. But often you'll see this scale going from 1 to 9, and 9 is where you've got a full-blown product and it's ready to go. But in between, you've got to go from the sort of basic research that's needed to more applied and developing the technology for a particular area. And that's this sort of 1 to 3 or 0 to 3. And then you eventually have something that you've sort of shown works in the laboratory. You've got what they call small scale prototype or a laboratory demonstration or prototype. The next stage is getting it out into where it's actually going to be used. I used to work in the Navy. We would make these things in the laboratory and they would look like they were going to work well, but then if you take it out on a ship and it's exposed to all of the harsh environment and the people who are operating it are sailors who are 19 years old and so on, then that's another level of robustness that you have to be able to demonstrate, the large scale or fieldable prototype. And then you get into demonstrating a whole system and eventually the production. So we've taken this scale and we've simplified it a little bit. And if you go to the next chart, there's a number of sort of simpler steps from idea / basic research to the demonstration in the lab, a lab prototype. Maybe if you're in medicine, this is an animal test. But then there's the demonstration in the field, something clinical, a clinical test. And finally, validation, the full-blown sort of reliability and reproducibility demonstration, and finally production. So if you click again, Paolo will ask people to vote for what stage they see their idea or concept at now. And I'm guessing that we're probably going to see mostly at the earlier stage and not so much at the later stage. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be interested in this class. But a few say they've got something that's already in the clinic. So people have advanced along this technology readiness scale, and it's good to keep in mind and to sort of, it helps you, I think, prioritize what needs to happen next. So about half are basic, and then some are even all the way to validation level, which is quite advanced. Great. Thank you. Okay, so the next slide, I will just sort of briefly touch on, but as I mentioned earlier, you can think of innovation in a rather linear way, and this is a very busy slide that I use sometimes when I'm talking about the advances in quantum information science. But if we focus at the top, the stage and TRL, so now you're familiar with this technology readiness level lingo, we just start at the bottom, 1 through 5. And that's where the sort of R&D happens. It can happen in industry, or it can happen in a university lab or a government lab, a research facility, a place like SRI. And it gets sort of the idea to a certain stage, and then it has to be handed off really to a company, a commercializer, who is able to do all of the regulatory compliance and all of the scaling up and looking at how you're actually going to manufacture this thing, because every good idea isn't always scalable and easy to make. So this is just a way of looking at the whole picture. We're focusing, most of your activities are, I'm assuming, and we just showed, are probably in this sort of 1 to 5 area where you're getting up to that prototype and system level demonstration. Federally funded research, as I show here, is primarily at the earliest stages. And there's some challenges sometimes, and it's called the valley of death, and getting from those research institutes and organizations to the right people who can make the commercialization happen. If you advance now, and how am I doing on time? We okay? Okay, so this is just sort of a picture that is taken from the semiconductor industry. I think it makes a nice point, and that is on the left is the picture of the first semiconductor transistor that was demonstrated at Bell Labs in 1947. And there isn't a scale on this picture, but it's very macro. It's several inches tall or centimeters tall. And that was just a demonstration of the potential, the ability of a semiconductor material to be switched on and off. And it created the digital capability, really, that's at the heart of all of our electronics today. But on the right is shown a modern transistor that's about a 200 millimeter wafer, I believe, and it shows billions of transistors on each of those little squares. So obviously the scaling that has happened over the decades is enormous, and that's really what's made possible the power of the information age. And in the middle are shown all of these processes and equipments and innovations that had to happen in order to go from what's on the left to what's on the right. And that took decades. And that can be something that is true in your industry as well. So you can't expect, not everybody is going to be like Facebook and go from somebody coding in their dormitory room at university to a billion-dollar industry in just a short time. It depends on the field and the application, but you need a lot of a supply chain, really, and that can be very important to keep in mind that in order for your idea to be real, it could involve a lot of other partners along the way. So the next chart, so this just is to illustrate the real breakthrough, a really important breakthrough, which was the integrated circuit. And I think I have a picture of the first integrated circuit on this slide. It's not very pretty, but on the left was, one transistor. On the right is all of these connected transistors, and being able to do that in a single material. The integrated circuit happened in about 1957. So it was already 10 years to go from the left to the middle, and then from there to what we have today. Okay, next slide is just a picture from the quantum world. And this is a picture of Google's quantum computer. That's shown on the left with this yellow sort of bell on top. That's a refrigerator. The refrigerator is open, and the processor that is the quantum brain, if you will, is at the bottom of that whole apparatus. It's not very big at all, and all of the electronics that are required to connect to the transistors, the qubit transistors, quantum transistors, if you will, are shown there in the middle. And they all have to be kept at incredibly low temperatures because quantum transistors are extremely sensitive to thermal noise. And so there's an enormous apparatus, and it's expensive, and it takes a lot of energy to run just to keep the system at the temperatures for operation. And then you have all of these cables that go in. I think someone said this was taken, this picture, when it was only 1/2 done being wired. So twice as many cables had to be wired up to that processor and go into the low temperature device. And this is really not scalable. It's the power of quantum computing is enormous, but we probably don't have the final technology. We're more like that transistor picture on the left from the last graphic. And there's going to be innovation needed and a lot of players to come up with solutions to what's being done with existing technology today. So even though this is a very early stage technology, it takes a lot of resources, obviously, to take it from idea to a demonstration where we are today. So if you go to the next slide, this sort of all was by illustration of the fact that there's a lot of different capabilities that are important to taking an idea to market. And we just show some of them here. And so you need to think about what holes exist, what you've got, what your strengths are, or your team, your initial team, and what you don't have. And maybe a lot of times, of course, in the technical area, the idea comes from the inventor, the person who has the science and technology know-how, but they really don't know how to scale it up. They don't know how to create a business out of it. They don't know what the regulatory environment is or what the standards are that are going to be needed to operate. they haven't got a legal background, etc. So if you click, I think, Paolo, you put this into a question for people to answer. You want to divide 100% of where you need help among these areas, and we include other in case we're missing an important one for you. So this takes a little math skills, but if you divide it up, I'm sure you can do it using Menti. So are you needing engineers to join your team? Do you need a business manager, somebody who can sort of make a business plan? You need to think about marketing. I mean, you know, if you have a great idea and nobody knows about it, you're not going to be selling it. So you need to be thinking about how to communicate to your customers and to talk to your customers about what they need. That's a two-way conversation. The regulation side, I think for those folks who are in the medical and healthcare probably need to be thinking about regulation and understand where that's going to need to be addressed along the way. And then, of course, the legal. If you haven't already got your patent, you may need help getting a patent secured. Now, I will say while you're typing in your answers here that having a patent is not a necessity. It is often, I think, viewed that way, but your technical know-how is extremely valuable. And if you want to treat that as a trade secret and protect it that way, that's one way to go. Of course, in some fields, copyright is important, or trademarking. If you're branding your idea, can also be a form of intellectual property. But all of these require some legal documents to be filed, and you may or may not be up to the task yourself. Okay, so it looks like funding came out on top. Perfect, that's the right answer, because the next chart, if you go ahead, oh, people are still answering. And it's good that it's quite distributed among all of these, but legal is near the bottom, and funding and business and marketing near the top. So I think that you're at the right place. Again, the Academy is going to help with a lot of these.
I can remind people that while you are speaking and also later, they can add the Q&A questions. There are already some 4 at the bottom, but you can both submit your answers like now, and also add the Q&A questions that will be answered at a later stage. Thank you, Celia.
Great, yes. Please, that's one of the weaknesses of the online experiences. I don't see your hands going up. Okay, so in the funding area, there are, again, I think a lot of people right away think I need investors. And investors can take many forms, and you should really think hard about it before you decide which of these paths to follow and what the pluses and minuses are, because there's always trade-offs. Family and friends and your own savings, perhaps, is where you often start. And then there are now, of course, all kinds of crowdsourcing possibilities, and I show a handful of them up here: Kickstarter and GoFundMe and some others. And I have to say, I don't know the pros and cons of the different platforms, but you can read online reviews of them, and they can be very helpful ways of getting some initial funding. And you, of course, hear the stories of people who went out and wanted to get, you know, $50,000 and they got $200,000 in no time flat. So there's tricks, I'm sure, to marketing your idea on one of these platforms. Angel investors, so these are people who have been very successful and have some resources and are interested in making investments, but they aren't necessarily going to be guiding the business so much as being your sort of silent partner. And they can be very savvy business people. I know an example of a university professor who had an angel investor who had made his money in insurance or some area of business, was not an expert in the technology at all, but of course had a lot of business savvy. And so that can be very helpful. And it can be a good initial source of investment. VC is a whole nother model. And you know, VCs take equity, and generally they're going to be a partner, but you're having to give up something at the same time. And then there are funds that are run by foundations and other not-for-profit organizations. I just show at the bottom here the Gates Foundation Strategic Investment Fund, but there are many, many more. And they can be very well-resourced. They can be a good source of funding. They often have an area in which they are focused. I think the Gates Foundation is focused on world health, global health, for instance. And then there are government funds, and I just show the ones, of course, I'm in the US, so I'm more familiar with the US resources. There's the SBIR program, Small Business Innovation Research. They call it America's Seed Fund, and it's small grants, but they're very competitive in a sense. And when a company is successful in getting one of these grants, it tells other investors that the US government thinks this is worth investing in. And so it can, just that sort of seal of approval from the government can be more valuable than the dollars in some ways. And then there's an organization called InQtel, which is funded by the sort of intelligence community, the part of the US government that's not very often in the limelight, not very visible, but has a lot of technology needs. And so they put out investments in areas that help them. They're sort of pulling from the commercial sector to their application areas by making these investments. So they don't share very much about maybe what they're going to use things for, but they have the ability to advance things that have both a commercial and then a national security application. So that's another form of government investment. So I just want to wrap up, if you go ahead to the next slide, with a summary, things that I think everyone should keep in mind as they move forward. First of all, it's important to listen and to learn constantly. Sometimes, when I was doing policy work, I sometimes would remind scientists who would come in and say, well, you should do this, and I know best. And you know, you have an idea, and you know it and love it better than anyone. But you don't know everything. And so it's really important to, as you talk to others, to the potential customers, to the potential investors, not only to talk about it, here's what I have, here's why you should like it, but to listen to them and get that feedback and take it in and evolve your idea to accommodate the market and the people that you're talking to. So learning. And I like to listen to these podcasts about companies being started. There are a number of them out there. How I Built This is one that I enjoy very much. I just was listening to the story of Impossible Meat, the plant-based meat company that started by a professor from Stanford University who was 60 years old almost at the time he started the company. So that's a proof that you're never too young or too old to start a company. Keep focused. I think, and I show this picture on the right, you know, when you're starting something up, you feel like you have 20 different jobs to do, and you do in a way. So it's important to sort of prioritize and focus yourself and bring on teammates. Pick good people who can do some of those jobs that need to be done, but maybe aren't your strengths, and that you can't do because you don't have time to do them all. But also be realistic. I think you have to be passionate and realistic at the same time. The passion should be easy in a way, or you wouldn't be at this lecture and you wouldn't be working on taking something from the idea to practical use. But you know, there's this saying in Silicon Valley, fail quickly, and you shouldn't be afraid to fail. And again, if you listen to the backstory for a lot of entrepreneurs, they had some false starts along the way, and they learned. And they were able to take that learning on board and then correct, and the next time they were more successful. So I hope I've been able to share with you some useful information today. If you click again, Paolo, I just want to sort of remind everyone of this resource, the Enrich program and the ESDA in particular. And I'm happy to answer your questions about innovation, something that I've talked about. And I think we also have the team here to answer your questions about the Academy and the Enrich program. So with that, I will pause and see if there are any questions that have come in. Thank you.
Thank you, Celia. Thank you, Celia. And well, the questions will be coming also. You can also check them out from the Menti connection. So you can also start looking at them, but we will be answering them after the introduction now on the ESDP program and what's the Enrich program in the USA. It's a EU-funded project. What are the upcoming services, and get an ESDP overview from the fantastic crew members of the rocket. So I give you the floor, Johanna.
Thank you so much, Paolo, for giving me the floor and for your wonderful facilitation and moderation. And thank you so much, Celia, for the presentation. It's such a pleasure to see you giving already wonderful insights for our possible participants. Of what they can expect during our academy, because you have already so much knowledge that you are passing with this presentation, and thank you so much. And I would let everyone know that we can already announce that Celia agreed to be one of our mission specialists, so we will be continuing to work with her very closely. So Claire and me, we were gonna give you a very quick overview about what Enrich in the USA is, and then we really want to deep dive into the ESDP Online Academy, and Ilka and Manda will do that. Enrich in the USA is, as Paolo already said, an EU-funded project. It's funded by Horizon 2020, the framework program for research and innovation by the European Commission. We started in April 2017 already, so 3 years we have been all working together in this initiative. And the initiative actually is made out of 3 projects, which offer services to connect European research, technology, and business organizations with 3 global front-run innovation markets, and these are Brazil, China, and the USA. And what does Enrich mean? It means European Network of Research and Innovation Centers and Hubs. What we are doing is really to look in building self-sustaining centers and hubs across the USA, we are connecting and supporting Europeans with US Americans. So we're really curious from the audience also to getting in touch with you, to connect with you about what you are doing and to listen and to learn. We're looking into partnering about programs, also becoming part of the academy in some way if you're not becoming a participant yourself. Rather than somehow to duplicate or even compete of what you are doing. So we really want to strengthen the ties between Europe and the US. We do that by providing standardized but also tailor-made support services, we are doing this through our main consortium partners. We are 9 consortium partners.
And yes, and as Joanna mentioned, indeed, we are a global network. And as you can see, we have 9 consortium partners from 7 different countries across the Atlantic. Why is this important to everyone to know? We want to emphasize that our consortium partners, our network and expertise are also your network, your expertise to access. And within this unique combination mixture of government-affiliated agencies, innovation firm, accelerators, university associations, we will be able to provide you with the right network expertise you need. And as you will see in the next slide, and Joanna had mentioned that we are a network of centers and lending hubs in the United States. So in US, we have 3 centers, one in West Coast, San Francisco, managed by our partner, EAEC. Also Boston Center, the East Coast Center, managed by NBIA, and newly launched Washington, D.C. Center, managed by Incura, and also 7 highly selected vending hubs. Through those centers and hubs, we will be able to provide some tailored service and training that to enable you and accelerate your access to the U.S. market.
Yeah, and our services are really supported by the core consortium partners that Claire just represented, but also by many other partners, many ambassadors we have to really partner also in different programs or as landing hubs with incubators, accelerators, many universities, tech transfer offices. So it's really a vast network of those who are interested in bringing forward entrepreneurs and people that have really cool ideas. With our services currently, what we are trying to do is to support you along the enriched journey, to accompany researchers, but also innovators along their entrepreneurial journey. There are different stages. So in the beginning, you have to get informed. As Celia also said, there are a lot of regulations. So in which area am I? I just need to really just start by looking into all the information. Then you need to get connected to people. You need to get connected to investors, but also to channel partners, to the right ecosystem, to the right people to talk to. And then you get going, so you can receive in-depth monitoring and training customized to your needs. What is your idea? What's your vision? What do you exactly need? Because every career path is different. Every career path will need something different. We are offering different services along these lines. And at the end, you can also look for funding. So we might do a match and pitch event, etc. Now I'm handing over to Ilka and Mende, who will really tell you more and deep dive into the Entrepreneurial Skills Development Program Online Academy. It was originally thought to be and planned and programmed as a physical event in the US to bring Europeans over. But now we turned our problem during the crisis of not being able to travel into a really cool opportunity, and our working relations have become stronger ever since, I would say. So I will leave the floor now to our ESDP Online Academy specialist.
Thank you, Johanna, and thank you, Claire. Okay, but before diving into the program, I would like you to take a moment to look at this poor guy here. Maybe you can relate to some of his statements or questions. Like, for example, who are the right persons to talk to? How about funding and sponsoring? And what about licensing?
And this is where the Entrepreneurial Skills Development Program Online Academy really comes into play. The ESDP Online Academy is a 4-week-long online practical and applicative training program that aims to provide vital skills and knowledge to nourish entrepreneurial mindset and also to increase your individual research impact. On the next slide, I want to stress that if you are an early to mid-career EU researcher and you're enthusiastic to commercialize in the US in the future, this is an ideal and important program for you. The mission of this program is twofold. One, ESDP Online Academy aims to give you the necessary skills, trainings, and networks to integrate into the US innovation ecosystem and also to commercialize in the US market. The second mission of the ESDP Online Academy is to encourage and facilitate bold innovation and entrepreneurship that early to mid-career innovation and research actors have to offer.
Exactly, and this is how we structure our entrepreneurial journey. So every week of our online academy will include 4 main parts, and we will start our week on Thursdays with a video lecture. The video lecture will be held by a GoToMeeting and will be approximately 45 minutes long, followed by a 15-minute Q&A session. Every video lecture will touch upon one specific topic of the week and will be brought to you by leading experts from the US. We have recruited really bright minds, just like Celia today. Again, thank you so much, who will teach you and give you unique insights into their respective fields of expertise. At the end of every video lecture, you will receive a small individual exercise, a small homework, so to say, in order to follow up on the content you have learned during the video lectures. Here, you will also have the unique opportunity of receiving a one-on-one feedback with a mission specialist. Those sessions can be scheduled really individually, fitting to your schedule over the course of the week, and will give you again another opportunity to learn from experts in the field. We will end our week with an interactive crew session on Wednesdays. Here, the whole crew comes together and really discusses on the contents of the week, shares best practices and experiences, and also exchange on any issues you feel are really important for you at this stage. The crew sessions will be facilitated by Paolo, our rocket pilot, so to say, and throughout the whole journey, this will be supported by an online learning machine, an online management system, where you can connect with your cohort. You can find important pre and post learning documents here, further information, and you can also reach out to the crew members, to us, on this system. So this is a really short overview about the topics we're touching throughout the ESDP Online Academy, but please be aware that we want to tailor this whole program really to your individual needs. So this means that we can alter the contents of the week slightly together with you, because we really want you to be part of the learning process in general. Nevertheless, we will touch upon some basic areas like your commercial value of your research or your research idea, intellectual property management, and funding fundamentals.
And as part of your ESDP Online Academy, you will have access to a pool of mission specialists during the entire course of the program. We have confirmed a group of seasoned mission specialists, including our keynote speaker, Dr. Celia. Thank you very much again. You'll have access to a range of expertise, such as deep tech, to research compliance, to new venture development, among many more to come. So to stick with Paolo's space analogy, imagine that you're in a rocket ship and you are in an outer space mission, and you need expertise with a certain issue. That's when your mission specialists really come in and give you the guidance that you need, because they have been through a similar journey. So we have a mission specialist for the course of this program for you to contact them with questions, and they will be willing to provide you with the expertise on the particular field or industry. So on the next slide, you will see that to guide you through this exciting program, here are our ESDP Online Academy crew members. We have Joanna, a team leader, and Ilka, scientific officer from DLR. They are your EU representatives. On the other side of the pond, we have Claire Chen, Senior Manager, and myself, Mende Yangden, from the National Council of University Research Administrators representing the US.
Right, and what do you need to take away from this presentation? So the most important next steps would be for you, of course, to register for the four-week full ESDP Online Academy, and you can do this via this registration link here. We will also circulate the link after this webinar. And we will then conduct individual strategic calls scheduled with you in order to discuss your expectations, needs, and wishes. And then on May 26th, we will have our first onboarding with the first cohort. This will also include an introduction session where we can all meet and get to know each other. And we will also give you more detailed information about any technical prerequisites, logistics, timing, and the agenda there. After that, we actually will be ready for takeoff, and we will start our first week on May 28th. Regarding the registration in general, we will give you the opportunity to really put a price tag on the whole program and on the value you attribute to your entrepreneurial development. So you can either pay 39, 59, or 79 euros, you choose. And once you registered, you will be contacted by us, and we will give you more information about any payment terms. So yeah, stay on board. This is where you can find us. We are on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And obviously, we are also there for you in person. You can always reach out to Mende and myself, and also to the other crew members. And most importantly, here's the registration links again.
Thank you for the fantastic introduction and very inspiring presentation also from Celia. Of course, I remind you, okay, this is the direction of the rocket. It's going towards the moon, but we should also press the button, call to action, you know, join. This is a great opportunity. It's really, I mean, I heard numbers like 39 euros for the whole thing, ridiculous. And so, I mean, of course, if you want to add more, it can be a lot more, but it's really, really something that's worth at least 100 times more. So in terms of contacts, in terms of networking opportunities, so, well, there are not many places, so hurry up. And let's move to the questions. And well, the questions that we were receiving, as I may remind you, you can also mark them with a thumbs up if you like them. And we have received 13 questions from all of you. Thank you very much for that. So the first one is, they are not generally addressed to someone, but where do I start shaping my idea if my research currently is 100% basic research and have very little commercial value? Celia, do you want to, well, of course, join the, I remind you again, join the thing. You know, you are in the right place. But also, Celia, what do you think?
So I think that it's sort of maybe the wrong question, but somebody who is in the basic research space doesn't mean you're not entrepreneurial and don't have ideas about how the basic results could have use. I was a materials researcher. I did very basic research. But as you work with something and you think about the new properties, the new capabilities, what it is capable of, then I think the next step is to say, well, who could take advantage of this? Who might be interested in it? Who might care about it? I was on the advisory board for a company that had a material that was an energetic material, sort of like an explosive, but it was unusual in that it could be controlled, turned on and off in a controlled way. Most explosives, once you light the fuse, it goes. And in this case, you could have this control. And they thought of all kinds of different applications for it, everything from use it in Hollywood for Las Vegas shows to something that could be used for oil exploration and drilling. So it's just your imagination in a way. And as you're working on these ideas, as you're working on the technology that has some capability, you're going to be, again, listening to the people who have problems, listening to people with problems, I think, is a good way to perhaps take those next steps. Again, I was working in a Navy lab. I was doing this basic materials research, but then I would hear from somebody saying, the Navy has a problem. They don't know how to whatever. And I could say, I think I have a possible solution. So there are the people with the needs who are looking for help. You just have to kind of put your antenna up and listen for those signals.
So if I may connect to your answer, you were showing before the quadrant of Bohr, Pasteur, and Edison. So you're suggesting people to pasteurize the Bohr.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a good way of thinking about it. So you may be a Bohr, and we explain that's spelled B-O-H-R, not the other kind of Bohr. But the path could go through the Bohr quadrant to the Pasteur quadrant very easily.
Yep.
Excellent.
And case in point, during this pandemic, during this time of need, I think this news came from one of our mission specialists, Dr. Stefano Lamy, who shared that Fermilab has actually a group of particle physicists has adapted into building a fast ventilator. easy to build and produce ventilator to solve the problem. So as Celia mentioned, it's really your imagination.
And sensing and understanding what are the needs in society and trying to imagine where to apply your fantastic idea. Thank you. Shall we try and look, do you want to add something, Joanna, to this or the others in the team, or I moved on to the next question?
Maybe just to add that exactly the first week will be about shaping your business idea. So it's really helping you to focus, to see all the possibilities that can be out there, and to really help you getting this idea out and finding the right people and creating that vision that you need, and also the inner strength to stick with that idea and to pursue it and to find the right commercial value. So join the program. The one who asked that.
If you don't have your idea about how to apply your business, that's immediately on the beginning. It happens at the beginning that you are starting to shape your business idea. Let's see the next question that got most likes. So can postdocs and graduate students currently in research apply to the online academy even if they are still far from being an entrepreneur? Yes.
100% yes.
yes, of course. Join us. Yeah, of course. SurveyMonkey, I can't remind, I don't remember all the link, but it's at the end of the presentation. So
and I think the mission of the online academy is not really to help you immediately bring your product to market. It's really to shape your idea and also identify if this is the suitable path for you, because not everybody might be suitable.
Thank you. So is it difficult to apply for a patent in the US? Celia, maybe you are more experienced in this.
The answer is really no. And if you are an individual inventor, you can even do it yourself. And I think the cost is relatively low. But having somebody who's more experienced, a patent lawyer who kind of understands the way to write the claims and what you're declaring as the invention so that it will go smoothly through the process, I think is probably worth paying a little bit of extra for. So it's not particularly difficult if what you mean is submitting the application once it's written. It takes time because there's often quite a long time before you hear back, and then there may be some questions, what they call office actions, and then there's another wait. You send in your answers and you wait again. So it can be a very lengthy process. But once you file, you have a certain amount of protection just as soon as you file the patent application. And the reason, so an application, of course, is just your idea of what you're protecting. What comes out the other end may look a little different, but nevertheless, to the extent that what you claim is allowed and issued, then you have protection going back to the day you filed the patent application.
Thank you very much. I don't know, Claire, also from the NCURA perspective, would you like to add or move to the next question?
I think Celia covered it very well, and we will have mission specialist experts in university in the US that deal with tech transfer that can help our participants to look at specifically if patent is right for you or is licensing right for you to find the option.
So thank you very much for that question on the patent. Let's look at the next one. What do you recommend to get in the right network of people who can help you with your business ideas and plans? Well, of course, again, call to action. Yes, join the ESDP program. Plus, from our panel and crew, any other suggestions?
And Celia, I think we also see a question that related to an I-Course program. Do you want to combine this one and sort of also explain to folks what I-Course program is and how people can get involved?
Well, you can go ahead and answer that combined question, but I will say in regard to how do you get the right network? You know, if you're in a region that has a sort of entrepreneurial ecosystem, there probably are groups that meetups. They may meet at a cafe. They may be sort of based out of a university or some innovation hub, or a regional economic development organization may have programs like the one that's part of Enrich. So there's something, you know, once we can go outdoors again and meet in person, there's a lot to be said for in-person meetings. So if you're not able to get what you need from the Enrich program, I think you can look for other complementary programs, especially, again, if you can meet in person and make some connections wherever you happen to be located, that can be very helpful.
Yeah. And also that's one of the reasons actually why we have this pool of mission specialists, really to bring, because everyone has different expertise and different knowledge. So it's really bringing you to the right people and seeing who can answer which questions. And there may be some who will guide you and support you for a longer period of time, being a mentor, but some might be there for just very specific reasons, specific answers. And then what we do in the online academy is also that we have the interactive crew sessions where you get together with other people like you who are looking for answers, and maybe they have just found out that there is, what Celia mentioned, a meetup, a certain group that might also be suitable for you, and you can all exchange on best practices.
Yeah, maybe I can also add a suggestion. I help creating communities of practice and networks, and they thrive on the action that you take to be part of them. So don't expect, if you join any network or a meetup, that you get things from that. You also have to be active in proactive in connecting and meeting and so on. For instance, I am a member of the International Association of Facilitators. We are 2,000 facilitators all over the world, and it's a voluntary-based association. But the more I intervene, do activities, the more I get. And so don't be passive when you want to network. Be as active as possible and choose your the topics you really love. So that was answered, yes. And well, yes, this you mentioned podcasts about starting a company. People were curious about that. Celia,
Yeah, so
we
the
will.
one I sometimes,
Well,
and I'm sure there are many more. I did reference this one called How I Built This, which I enjoy. There's another one, and I have these, you know, on my phone that I can easily pull up, one called Acquired, which is looking back more on technology companies that were acquired and, you know, ended up being very successful. So they're just models, they're examples that you can listen to. I call it educational radio because it's entertaining, but it's also, there's always something educational I learned there. And even for my current job, which is a startup about a consortium for quantum technology, I find them very useful. So it's entertaining and educational. So you can find many of them, I'm sure.
Excellent. We will share your links with the email when we thank all the participants. I'm sure everyone will be happy to get the suggestions about the podcasts. And next one, oh my God, how many hats are too many hats, Cecilia?
Oh, that probably depends on the individual. Some people are multitaskers and some people are not. So I'm not sure there's a fixed answer there. And
there's a gender dimension, one could say. I mean, men probably are less able to have more hats.
Oh, I don't know. Well, and then there's the question of delegation. I'm pretty bad at delegating. You need to practice at that too, to get rid of some.
Thank you for that. So Oh, yes, another very specific question. Just
Sure.
when you mentioned that very, very low temperature, what's very low temperature?
Yeah, okay. So the coldest temperature is 0 degrees Kelvin, absolute zero. And these Google devices operate at millikelvin, temperatures of millikelvin, milli meaning 1,000th of a degree Kelvin. So it's very close to as cold as possible. And the way you do it is with that big refrigerator device, which works using liquid helium, which actually has a boiling temperature of 3 Kelvin. So in order, or 4 Kelvin. So in order to get down to millikelvin, you have to do some tricks to get even colder than the temperature at which helium boils. So that's how cold.
Great, thank you for that. Let's see if we can answer. Do we have time, crew, to get a few more questions, or because we have people attentive and following us? So yes, there's a, can I start a company from a government-funded project? If yes, how do I discuss with my university and agencies, and do I need to share revenue with funding agencies?
So I'll give a really quick answer because I used to work in this area. I was at this Navy lab. It was government-funded research, but in the US, the government has put into law that inventions that are made with government funding, the ownership of those inventions can be assigned to the inventor, basically. Now, the inventor is an individual, but the individual may have an agreement with their employer, the university, or some other employer. So the rights may end up belonging to the university, for example. And then if you want to take your result, your idea, and go out and make it into a business, you have to make a license with the owner, i.e. the university in that case. But the government has an interest in having these ideas that come from research get out into application. So they, in the US, have put in place policies and laws that encourage that, and I think that there are similar approaches outside the US, but maybe Incura, somebody from Incura can help with that.
Yes, and thank you, Celia, for touching that point. And I think there's one issue that we should really clarify, that in the US, when you receive a funding, your PI, co-PI, no matter, when you receive the funding, it's not you that you're receiving the funding, it's your institution, your university, taking the responsibility or also the risk of the funding given by a government. And also it depends on the funding agency. They might have different guidelines and report and compliance regulation related to this issue. So it's the general research administration, research management answer. It depends. It depends where you receive the funding, and it also depends the topic that you're working with.
So shall we wrap up? I think we should thank Celia and of course all the people who are following this Launchpad webinar. And I move to the last slide and remind you all to for the call to action. Don't miss this opportunity. And Joanna, yes, you wanted to say something? Yes.
Yes, people register.
Yes, register, call to action. And what a fantastic crew do you have? I mean, look at this team. And Celia, you are magic. I am really moved because I am a technical background. I am a sociologist, so it's fantastic to hear science talk from such an experienced person. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
And thank you. I want to thank Paolo for facilitating and moderating. Thank you so much. Thank you, Celia, for the wonderful presentation and having you on board. And thank mostly to my awesome team. I really had to learn hard how to delegate. But once you get it and once you start with working in a team, it's so much fun. So makes it even better to share your ideas and visions and create something together.
Yes, join us. We'll be with you from the next seminar on the business idea. Ciao.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.